Hello, everybody. It's that time again where me and Noble talk about WoW lore, and I know nothing about it, and he knows a lot about it, and I ask him questions.
Hello, everyone, and I'm pretty sure that in our pre-talk you said that I knew too much, not all of it, but too much.
I did say
It's
you know
perfect
too
amount.
much, yeah.
Balances out nicely. Hell yeah.
Yeah, because I'm the complete opposite. I like to know lore things, but I don't really get that into it. But I always think it's cool to know stuff, which is why I enjoy talking to you when we do these.
Yeah, we heard from people as well. Like a lot of you are actually really enjoying this series, especially since we can have an insight as to okay, this is somebody coming in completely new or have no idea what's going on, and yeah, I think it works out really well.
Yeah. So the last time we did this, I believe, was it the end of Dragonflight or is it the start of Dragonflight? I don't even remember.
Probably the start of Dragonflight, because otherwise,
Yeah.
nah, 100% the start of Dragonflight. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess that makes sense because we just we just had the end of Dragonflight,
Mm.
pretty much, I guess. But so we got War Within right around the corner, and I don't really know much about the lore outside of like I did the Emerald Dream, okay, and I pay a little attention to some stuff here and there, but like I need to like really know what's going on because I played the War Within Alpha. There's like stuff in the sky that we're like underground. I'm like, dude, I don't know what we're doing. The Earthen are here. I kind of know about the Earthen a little bit, but why don't you go ahead and start wrapping up the Dragonflight lore for us so we can do that before we get into War Within stuff.
Right. For those worried, by the way, we are going to be avoiding War Within Alpha because we don't want to dive into those spoilers. This is more as a precursor. Like, okay, this is what came before. This is what's going to happen with the War Within. A little bit of an interlude what we know so far. So at least you know what's up. And if there
Yeah.
are any spoilers in our conversation, because who knows where it goes, we'll give you a fair heads up.
Yeah, exactly.
So a wrap up on Dragonflight. Well, the fun part is that Dragonflight isn't that necessary to dive into the War Within. I would argue that the expansion Legion is more connected to the War Within than Dragonflight itself is.
Oh,
Yeah, it's actually the fun part. So we have Chris Metzen actually coming back as like I think his title is lead narrative designer or something.
yeah.
Basically, he's come back to take charge and like this is where we want to take the storyline, and then he got a whole team working on it to get the story together. And Metzen has left. I believe it was near the end of Legion, although don't quote me on that. But
Quote him on it.
so no, don't quote me on it. Don't go to the forum post. Dear Blizzard, I heard from Noble. But the Rebel Dragonflight, because we did do that talk before, basically Dragonflight reversed what happened with the Cataclysm. So basically Dragonflight restored the dragon aspects. So the dragons have their full powers again. We even got one more, which is Viranov, the aspect of storms. We saw the introduction of the primal incarnates. And the primal incarnates were primal dragons that empowered themselves with elemental power. And they were very much against the idea of what the dragons did. The dragons allied themselves with the Titans and the Path of Order. And these primal incarnates, they were very much more raw elementalist. And they were like, no, we don't want order or follow these edicts or whatever. And so a war broke out a long time ago, 20,000 years ago. And that war was won by the dragon aspects. Instead of killing them, they imprisoned them. And in Dragonflight, we saw them released from prison. The war kind of replayed itself. Only this time, we saw that Viranov, who was one of the primal incarnates, she actually became friends again with Alexstrasza and us. So she joined our side. Iridikron, who is like the mastermind behind it, the dev wing of the primal incarnates, like the planner and the schemer, he survived. And Firak, which was the fiery boy, the big, I want to burn the world guy.
Right.
Brilliant character. He got slain at the end of the Emerald Nightmare raid. So he was our big finisher for the expansion.
And so knowing all that now, what from that do we take into War Within, essentially?
Okay, so one of them is called Iridikron. And Iridikron is I would compare him to the Deathwing of the Primal Incarnates, as in he's very much connected to the domain of Earth. And we found out that Iridikron actually works together with someone called Zalatov. Zalatov is a being, for those that play during Legion, maybe you've played a Shadow Priest. Back in that expansion, they had like all these artifacts, all these really cool relics. It was an amazing experience, and I would love to play that expansion again. But all these artifacts had like lore behind them, and some of these weapons even had entities inside that started to whisper to you, like Zolotov. So Zolotov, Shadow Priest, close together. And the origin of Zolotov, we found out in scrolls and books, and we learned like, oh, this blade of the Black Empire, its origin is a mystery. Who knows where it came from? Is it a toe of the old god Yasharaj, or is it something else? We don't know. But what we do know is that Zolotov has played a massive role in the history of Azeroth. She has manipulated events here and there. So, for example, she manipulated trolls into making blood sacrifices, or she manipulated the Queen of the Dark Irons to corrupt Grim Batol and unleash darkness there, or she manipulated the one who created, well, not so much created, the one who brought like void magic into the Alliance, like Warcraft 1 and 2 lore, a whole bunch of things that Zolotov has done in the past connected to that blade. And that is the weapon that Shadow Priest just during the expansion played around with, empowered with. They went to all these locations and the blade started whispering to them like, oh, look at these temples. But you know what? Days of the Black Empire, when the old gods ruled the world, the Void, so much better. Oh, you think fighting against the Legion is really the big fight? You don't even know the big fight that's coming. She's whispering to us, manipulating to us. And at the end of Legion, we would see that the Titan Sargeras, he nearly completed his mission, right? He nearly destroyed Azeroth, which he's been trying to do with his Burning Legion for a very long time. And just in time, we pull him back. But before we pull him back, before we save the day, he manages to plunge his sword into the world. So, a big old cutscene. And now this corrupted weapon is inside the planet. And from Legion, we went over into the Battle for Azeroth expansion, where the world was wounded. There's like a soul inside. Her blood is pouring out. We're filling up our necklace.
Champion, the wounds.
Go heal the world. But first, let's not forget about that big old sword in Silithus, because it's kind of corrupted. You know, we kind of need to drain it of its corrupted powers. And wouldn't you know it, we also need to get rid of these artifacts, because we got a new expansion, and as Blizzard does, new mechanics, new things together, out with the old, in with the new.
Right.
Let's drain this weapon. So we use the artifacts, including Zolotov, presumably, in order to cleanse Sargeras' sword, in order to... so, sorry. I'm a little bit sick, so that was a little bit of Dutch that slipped out there. I'm sorry, everybody. I'll try to keep it English. I know. I'm sorry. So, that never happened before. Hey. So we had to cleanse the sword, and we used Zolotov, presumably. And then we went off into our merry way into Battle for Azeroth, where everybody gave up their artifacts. Not just the Shadow Priest, everybody. But, wouldn't we know it, in Battle for Azeroth, we ran into Zolotov again. And some way, somehow, she jumped out of Shadow Priest's banks, or lore-wise, she just found a way again. Think like the ring from Lord of the Rings, right? Like she has a will of her own.
Yeah.
She was in the midst of being used in a ritual with N'Zoth, and we showed up. And we, the brilliant heroes that we are like, hey, Zolotov, Naifu, Waifu, long time no see. How can we help? We help her out with gathering like these relics. This is connected to the raid Crucible of Storms, which is like a mini raid in Battle for Azeroth. The body that Zolotov is in, if you know what she looks like from the promo art or whatnot, is not her actual body. It is the body of one of the ritualists that were doing it, and she just inhabited it. So even though she looks amazing, that's not what Zolotov actually is. She is something far more voidy and ancient and whatever. But this is the body that she has right now.
So is Zolotov like an old god prophet or something? Or like, do you think, or is this one of those like spoiler things? Like, is it like, I don't know. It's just, they sound very old god. 'Cause didn't like Yogg Saron whisper to everybody, and then Zolotov's kind of doing the same thing?
Yes. So what Zolotov is unknown. So we can't really spoil it. We can speculate about it. We don't know. We honestly do not know. I don't think that she is just an old god, because quite recently we've done the introductory quest on the expansion. Have you done the intro quest yet? The pre-event for War Within?
Yeah, I've done that.
Okay, so in that one, we eventually get a cutscene in which they talk about Zolotov, and we find out that Zolotov is not unknown to someone like the Locust Walker, and the Locust Walker is a story on its own. But what's important about the Locust Walker is that he's an Ethereal, and the Ethereals are all the way back from the Burning Crusade. The Ethereals came into the game. They're the mummy spiritual creatures with like the gates and the Star Trek technology. And they, once upon a time, fought against Dimensius the All-Devouring, this big old Void Lord that they pulled into this universe and they tried to defend themselves with arcane shields, but it wasn't enough. And then that clash of magic like blew their spirits away and turned them into the ethereals that we see them as. And then they started wrapping themselves with bandages. But it turns out, what they're now adding, right? Like we got to keep in mind, they're adding that to the lore.
Yeah.
Dimensions did not just suddenly appear. Karesh started to sing to its people, similar to how Azeroth is now singing to our people. And then Zalotov, the Harbinger, was there as well, because Locust Walker knows her. So Zalotov is now being linked to bringing Dimensions in. So if we look at what she's done in the scrolls of lore on Azeroth, where she's like manipulating events in the background and she's like putting pieces into place, could it be that she did the same during Karesh? Like, has she been manipulating the ethereals in order to summon Dimensions? And has she been putting things into place to get Dimensions in? And what is she trying to do with Azeroth now? And that is, of course, the big mystery of the War Within and the whole World Soul saga. We know it has something to do with the World Soul, and definitely with the Void and the Old Gods and the Void Lords, but what exactly she's trying to do is still to be decided. Maybe it's like the Silver Surfer trying to bring in Galactus and have like the planet eaten, right? But in this case, Dimensions that's going to eat it, or something else.
So, honestly, I think that sounds pretty cool. It sounds like if the jailer was kind of interesting.
Exactly. Oh my! You hit the nail on the head. I've said during Shadowlands, very stoically, like something like the jailer could never work. Retroactively adding a character to the story and be like they're responsible doesn't work. But I was completely wrong, because looking at Zalotov, it can work. You just don't do it for everything. You do it on a smaller scale and you do it very selective, and then you can make it work because it's an interesting character. It's been slowly integrated. People are familiar with her. They have voice files and a personality and a character, and people rotate around it, so it's actually really well done. On top of that, they're also using stuff that is being built up on the Burning Crusade, because the ethereals are not that well known, and while Dimensions was kind of wrapped up during the Burning Crusade, they opened it up again by saying like, oh yeah, what we fought with Dimensions back then, because we have fought against Dimensions, the Old Devouring, during the Burning Crusade, but that was just a whimper of its power. That was just a small sliver of what the actual Dimensions is like, and the actual Dimensions is still out there somewhere, apparently coming our way.
Yeah, I think, well, even tying into the whole jailer bit, I think the issue I had was they didn't really build up anything, like you were saying. It was just like, yeah, this guy's here. He's he's a really bad guy. It's like they didn't really, it's like you have to build up to something. There was no build up there. Or at least have something like Deathwing, where like he was just like, yo, guy, like you kind of knew about Deathwing, and then he was just like, all right, I'm gonna burn everything, and you're like, yo, this guy sucks, right? It's just, I don't know. It's just, that's a whole nother tangent.
Shadowlands is a whole. We've had Shadowlands many discussions, but at least Blizzard themselves have like internal presentations where they're like, yeah, Shadowlands did not work, critical failure.
Yeah.
So they're aware of the mistake. So yeah.
Yeah. So this does sound far better, with actual interesting angles and such. So what is the World Soul? I know you mentioned the World Soul. What actually is that?
Another thing that's a little bit up in the air. So once upon a time, the lore that we were gotten was that inside of Azeroth there is a slumbering Titan soul. And we were told that the Titans, they grow up in these planets, and once they're done growing up, they'll wake up and they'll become Titans. That's what we've always been told. We've seen this also with something like Argus, for example. Back in Legion, we found out that inside of the planet of Argus, there was also a spirit, but this one had been taken hostage, taken captive by Sargeras. But once it came out, it kind of came out like a Titan, right? Mm-hmm. But what they're working on, what they're throwing out there, suggesting is that maybe what's inside of the world is not necessarily a Titan, but more a world soul, and dependent on what kind of cosmic force is able to get its hands on it, that is what that world soul becomes. So, for example, we know about the old gods that once upon a time crash landed on Azeroth, and they started to infect the world of Azeroth, right? Like that's the days of the Black Empire, as we call it. That's when the old gods ruled the world. Then the Titans found the world, and they were like, hey, old gods, don't do that. That's our spirit inside, right? However, how much is what the Titans have done, which is get rid of the old gods and infect the world with their order and all their magics, how different is that from what the old gods were trying to do with their chaos magic, basically, with their void magics, right? So you could see it as two different forces trying to fight over the same thing. Similar similar with the jailer going into for the soul of the world of Shadowlands, where he's like, death comes to claim the soul of your world. That was the cosmic force of death coming for it. What would happen if Zolotav brings the void back in to try and claim the soul, or maybe life wants to have a go, or maybe the light wants to have a go? Like all these cosmic forces that the Warcraft universe consists of, they could all be fighting over these world souls. And we jokingly once upon a time were discussing on the Discord, like, what if all of them already have like a corrupted Titan being, and we could have like a Titan battle between these cosmic forces, which I would love to see in the cutscene. Like, see like a Death Titan versus an Order Titan versus a Void Titan, a Light Titan. That would be an epic battle. I couldn't fight it because I would be like the size of their toe, but it would be cool to see, you know?
Yeah.
But all of that basically is speculation about what is a world soul. We're learning more and more. So far, we've been told, like by sources like Magni Bronzebeard during Battle for Azeroth, like, you must heal the wounds, champion. The world soul, the Titan inside, is saved. And everybody told us, from Queen Azara to the Titans to the demons, everybody said that there's a Titan inside of Azeroth. But what if they're all wrong and it's just supposed to be something else? And that's kind of another taking old lore and putting a bit of a spin on it. Like, what else could it be? And that's to be discovered.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty cool, to be honest, because it's like it kind of ties into how actual history works, where some people be like, oh, it's definitely this thing, and everyone believes it's a thing, and then it's completely something else. So like, I can see that actually being a realistic thing and not just some shoehorned in, like, it's not that.
There's definitely some changes happening, and we've had the same with, for example, back in Wrath of the Lich King, you would go through the Halls of Stone, I think. You would join like Bram Bronzebeard, and you would end up at the console, and the console would tell you about, this was after you saved him for like waves of mobs, right? And he's like, oh, I can access the console now, and it goes, boop, 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 boop,
Yep.
and they start pulling lore out. Turns out that what they're telling us there is actually what Keeper Loken told them to do. So that console was wrong as well, which I thought was, that was kind of cool. Like a keeper messed around with machinery, which told us at the time what we thought was the lore, and it's like, no, that's wrong. Now, I will argue that turning all of it as they've done with like the Chronicles or whatnot, that makes it a little bit too much pudding. But these smaller sections where they make minor adjustments, for example, Dimensions is still out there, or there could be something else in the world. Yeah, that offers interesting possibilities and makes you think like, okay, where is all of this going? Like, there's going to be obviously the war within. I'm going to assume that everybody noticed that it's not just us going deep into the world to fight a war. It's also going to be the inner conflicts of the characters, but it's also going to be a war over that soul of the world that's inside, that's screaming out like, hey, something's coming. And the cool part is that with this one, they've actually announced that we're going to get 3 expansions for one overarching story, right? Like the World Soul Saga. So what I would love for them to do is to actually make us lose. For the first time in World of Warcraft's history, I would like to wrap up an expansion, not with fireworks and it's the dawn of the Age of Mortals, or good job, you killed the Lich King, go home and have a party. I would want to lose. I want Dimensions to show up and go like, this is your planet, nah, this is mine. And then we just have to like abandon her for a while.
Yeah, I would actually love that too. Let's mix it up.
Go into space. You can use time walking to just verify and why we're still leveling on Azeroth. But once you get like the max level, you're gonna have to go into space, into Great Dark Beyond, as to call it in Warcraft, and go to like different planets. And obviously we'll save her because that's what we do. But not right away. Like, I would love for Zolotav to be more than just a harbinger. Let her actually win the world corrupted and void, and let's see how we find our way through it. They could even add like a little time skip to it. 10 years, 15 years of cooking into void goo. And let's see how we saved her now.
Yeah. Also, I just flew over a world quest. And it was like, spiders stink, aren't they? As you were talking.
I just love that. With PvP war mode on as well, where you're in like the middle of the most dramatic quest line, and then someone goes, there's a box of resources coming in. Come and get it.
Someone has spooked one of the Brutosaurs. So, I mean, I was going to ask about that too, because we have the trilogy, and we know there's going to be 3 parts to it. So, like, it kind of spoils it a little bit, but not really, because they're just giving, like, general synopsises, right, of, like, what's going to happen. So, like, I know Midnight and Last Titan, like, what's supposed to happen in those?
Good question. I believe that at the presentation is that with Midnight we're going back to places like Quel'Thalas, if I remember. I don't think they've actually given details as to what happens in the expansion itself, but they've mentioned like Quel'Thalas. And I think that in the Final Titan they mentioned the return of the Titans in whatever shape or form that might take. But beyond that, the details are a little bit unclear. And yeah, it's spoilery, but at the same time, and we spoken about this the other day on stream as well, which is the question of like losing in an expansion and how boring is it that we win every single time. But those are kind of like limitations that you place on the story told within an MMORPG. Like you can't wipe out your player character and go like game over. This isn't how it goes. So it's more like the liberties they can take and the road they can take you there, but it does have certain limitations at the end of the day. And when it comes going forward, it's more about the journey that takes you there rather than the final destination. And so far, I would argue that a big thing that I've missed in Dragonflight is a little bit of the impact, the little bit of that was really epic, you know, like this is a cool moment to rally behind. I think there's maybe like one moment in the entire expansion that really made me go, oh, that was kind of cool. And beyond that, it's all been hugging and holding hands and coming together as family, which has its place. Don't get me wrong. Like emotional talk is definitely needed, but I need those epic moments as well. Whereas in the War Within so far, and this is just speaking from the start, it's more a vibe like Legion, more the vibe of anything goes and stakes are high and yeah, epic moments galore.
Yeah. My big problem with the Dragonflight stories, it felt a lot like an anime type of thing where it's like the power of friendship, and I'm like, that's cool, but I don't really care, to be honest. That's just I've always been more of I like the different quests out in the world more than the overarching story a lot of the times, which is why a lot of times I like classic WoW, because that's kind of what it is. You're just out in the world doing all these little stories everywhere, which I think they've actually gotten better at too. It's just now you do have that big overarching story that has a lot of focus on it. So.
It's an interesting development because you're 100% right. Like in Classic, it was more on you're the random soldier helping out here and there, and you get to witness other characters' moments. And with such a focus on storytelling, like it's a lot more prevalent with voice acting, with quest boxes, with all these cutscenes. Like story is becoming a big selling point, and I don't know if it's the right path or not. Like I'm a big fan of the story, so obviously I'm cheering and I'm on board. Let's go. But I can understand for those that are like, I'm here more for the adventure, that it's a bit demanding, I suppose, like a bit much.
Yeah. But I mean, as long as they do it well, it's still, I think that's the big thing. I mean, you can do anything, but as long as you do it well, that's the most important part.
I always hope that people get like the Ravgate moment. Like for me, I started in Classic, played during the Burning Crusade, and I cared little about the lore. It wasn't until the Ravgate's cutscene that I was like, oh, what's happening here? And then retroactively I started looking up like Warcraft 3 and the information. If a cutscene like that happens, if a moment like that happens in the story and just grabs you, that's hopefully gonna happen for a lot more people and be like, oh, what is actually happening? Who are these characters? And then like I wish I could say you can do it in game, but that's just not gonna be an option. But then hopefully you can go outside and research and be like, oh, snap, this is actually really cool.
Yeah. So with the whole War Within, like diving down deep, because I know it's like the whole point of the new continent or whatever is you start at the top and you like keep going under. So is that pretty much us looking for the world soul thing, or like what? Why are we going so deep? And like, does that tie in with the earthen as well?
Okay, so okay. For those listening, we're not gonna consider BlizzCon as spoilers. I won't go into like alpha stuff, but BlizzCon is a presentation. We've seen that. Excuse me. So basically, what happens is people around the world are hearing her song ring out, and we're gonna figure out that going to that location is what we're supposed to do, and the voice is guiding us there basically, and we're gonna go into Kesselgar, which is the name of the general continent with the 4 zones, Isle of Dorn, Ringing Deeps, Hollowfall, and Ashkahet. And as we do, the heroes that we are, we go through the leveling zones, we meet new friends, we meet new enemies, we find out what the heck's going on, and we're trying to stop Zolotoff, of course, because she is so far being pitched as like the big bad, like as we've seen with that cutscene. Oh, the Harbinger, you might want to stop the Harbinger because it could prevent whatever it's bringing in, right? Like dementias.
Yeah.
Odds are that's gonna change along the way. I'm hoping, anyways, but we're gonna find out. And beyond that, it's more of a discovery, like, okay, what exactly is going on? Why are we hearing this song? And obviously, from Battle for Azeroth, we know that Azeroth can speak to us because we've had Magni the Speaker. But we haven't seen Magni in quite a while. So what's going on there? So far, Jaina says, like, we tried to reach Magni and he's just not answering the call. Does he not have his phone on him? Like, what's happening there? And that's still to be discovered.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. So it's just kind of like we are being summoned there by this voice, and it's just like, we gotta go.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
I also noticed, or wait, are the Earthen also just down there? Like, are they a product of we're going down there, we just run into them?
We could talk about this, yeah. So at the start of Dragonflight, they added a couple of new books to the game, as well as later on in Dragonflight. So a couple of in-game books, and they did like the Urman revamp, right? Like the dungeon was changed. In the dungeon, we found an interesting book which actually mentioned Khaz Algar for the first time in Warcraft's history, and they spoke about this report from back in the day. And there's been some kind of fissure and some sort of anomaly that's happening there, and so they send out the Irvin to investigate. And that's how the Irvin of Khaz Algar showed up there. And the way that the keepers work and the way that these Irvin work is, this goes back into the day as to when they were like bringing order to the planet of Azeroth. So you gotta imagine, this is way back in the past. They've defeated the old gods. They've locked them away in their prisons. They've defeated the elemental lords and they brought them to the elemental planes. Life is finally calming down for poor old Azeroth, but more is needed. And so the Titans, who are big old Titans, you might remember how Sargeras was like humping the planet at the end of Legion.
Yeah.
Titans are kind of big, so they got their keepers to do their work for them, and the keepers got like their Titan Forge to do their work for them. It's a whole management system. And these, you don't craft them by hand one by one. No, you're putting big old machines down in order to make a lot of them. In Mogu'shan Vault, for example, if you look up at the end in the final fight with Mob Remix, by the way, you're probably going to see it. You got like the Twin Emperor fight. If you look up, you can see all these Mogu statues. Like, that's a factory where they used to make Mogu by the thousands. Because the Mogu are also part of the Titan Forge. You've got Irvin, Vrykul, Mogu. What are they called? The foxes from Uldum. You know the one I mean?
The
Like
Volpera.
No. The big lion thingies.
Voldu. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Uldum.
Yeah.
Sorry, Uldum.
Yeah, Uldum.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
You know,
I don't know what
those-
they're called, actually. No, I'm thinking about it.
They're also Titan Forge. Like, they're all creatures created to help them do different jobs, like the terraform the planet or build factories or maintain coreways in the case of Khaz Algar. So some way, somehow, there's like this whole pathway all the way down into Azeroth. Was this the fissure that came out, and did they just like build a coreway around it, or did they manually craft it to be figured out? And that's how the Irvin came there. So they have like their operational systems going on in order to produce more Irvin. So it's its own self-contained system. So you got to imagine that the Titans or the Keepers, they're actually smart enough to be like, okay, we can't keep this going forever. So what we need is a system. So they made a factory in which they could just keep on producing Irvin. And all these Irvin, they know what to do, right? But it's been a really long time since the Titans spoke with them. And so they're wondering, like, okay, are these Titans, are they still out there? Are we just doing our job for the sake of doing our job? And you can see that there's a split happening. Some of them are desperately holding on to like, okay, the Titans are my gods, they're my creators, I'm going to do whatever they told me to do, I don't care, y'all do your thing. I know that the world around me is kind of crumbling away, but I'm just going to do whatever they told me to do. Then you got those that are like, chill out, man. You know, the Titans are gone. We are agents of our own life. We are oath-bound no longer. And we're just going to live our lives, and it's going to be great. We'll eventually pass away, but that too is part of it. So they step away, and they stop performing their jobs. And then you got those in the middle who are like, you know, it's becoming increasingly harder to maintain what I'm supposed to do because everything around me is crumbling, but I'm still going to try it. And they try to come up with new creative ways in order to fulfill their duties. And that's basically what we encounter when we go there with the Irvin and be like, oh, okay, what's happening here?
Okay, that actually makes sense. I didn't realize it was that kind of in-depth with them having existential crises.
Oh, my, I got a video up if you're interested. It's called The Irvin and the Curse of Flesh. my God. I thought when they made the presentation of BlizzCon, they were like, we're going to add Irvin as an allied race. And I'm like, you're going to make shiny dwarves an allied race? But nah, they've actually made like proper efforts to have existential crisis. I kid you not. Teeny tiny spoiler. There's literally one Irvin that says, what am I supposed to do with my life? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just an adventurer. Why do you ask me? I don't give you a role. And it's honestly, they have done such a wonderful job at portraying these Irvin into an interesting philosophical section as to I wish I could dive into details, but I'm not. But it's really interestingly done, and it's phenomenal, and it plays very nicely. They've done, in my opinion, a very nice job at making these Irvin far more interesting than I ever gave him credit for.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Because, yeah, at first they just made it sound like it's just some, allied race. Like, we're adding this because it's thematic. Like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So it is.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's still not Murlocs. It's still not Tusker. It's still not the Naga. But it's better than Urs with a couple of gems on him.
Yeah.
Or Dwarf and a couple of gems. Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm holding out hope that when we go back to, was it the last Titan goes to Northrend or whatever? That's when Tuskar happening. 100%. It's gotta happen.
Listen, they had Tusker in the Dragonflight intro cutscene, and we still did not get Tusker playable race. I don't know.
I mean, look, they know now. It's happening. We're going back to Northrend. They're gonna be there. We're gonna be able to play them. I'm calling it now. But
can they be DKs? That's the important question.
I hope so. I just want to have a full-on fishing racial profession as well, where it's like everything they have revolves around fishing. What was I gonna do? I was gonna oh yeah, Nerubians. I want to ask you about Nerubians because I know they're a big part of this as well.
You got a really good question, by the way. Just throwing it out there.
Thank you.
It makes my job a lot easier because I just have to tell you what I know, and it's like, oh, I don't have to think about a path to follow. Okay, Nerubians, right? So back to those days of the Black Empire, where the old gods ruled the world, and from their bodies there seeped ooey gooey creatures. You got like the faceless ones and the Kafraxi, and you fought a whole bunch of them in Ulduar, like the big tentacle creatures, like those.
Yep.
But amongst them, there were also the Akir. And the Akir are a bug race that we saw mainly in Battle for Azeroth, but they've been around forever. And the Akir do this really cool thing, like Eevee from Pokemon. I know you love playing Pokemon, right? So if you add a Akir and you put them near Kafun, you get the Kraxi, I believe they're called. If you put an Akir and you put them next to Yashirash, you get the Mentit from Pandaria. If you get the Akir and you put them next to Yaxaran, you get the Nerubians. So you got like 3 different evolutionary paths of this bug race.
That's actually cool. I didn't know it worked like that.
Yeah. So unfortunately, with how wonderful they've done N'Zoth in Battle for Azeroth, where they gave an old god out of its prison a full-blown patch and like 2 zones corrupted, N'Zoth didn't need its own bug race. N'Zoth just got the Akir as they were in their original form. Not jaded, by the way. So... Poor N'Zoth, man.
Yeah.
So anyways, Nerubians under the Yaxaran, Akir under Yaxaran become Nerubians, and they build these empires and whatnot. And I honestly need to look up what they've changed, because in the past it was said that the Lich King took the Nerubian architecture and made it his own. That's why someone likes Noxramas, it looks like Nerubian architecture, but that's because the Lich King full-on stole it from the Nerubians. But they changed it with its origin now lying in Maldraxxus in the Shadowlands. So I need to double check how the Nerubians got their hands on it. But anyways, architecture. And in the case of the Nerubians in Northrend, we saw something happening in Warcraft 3, which kind of seems like the Nerubians stepped away from Yaxaran for some reason. And I don't recall them ever giving a clear reason. It's just like, Yaxaran is imprisoned, the Nerubians go do their own thing. Fantastic. Except these poor Nerubians, they found themselves in the War of the Spider. They found themselves in the war against the Lich King. And the Lich King is this necromantic being. At the time was still like Ner'zhul in the ice, right? Thrown down by Kil'jaeden. Still no Arthas there. And slowly but surely he was like flexing his necromantic powers across Northrend, seeing what he could turn into undead. And he got into a battle with the Nerubians who already lived there. And while the Nerubians, great fighters or whatnot, they could not win against the endless undead, as well as their own kin being resurrected, up to the point where eventually their own king, Anub'arak, was slain. and he was resurrected by the Lich King and was forced to serve his will. That's why we see in Warcraft 3 a Nubarak show up to Arthas and be like, "Hey, Death Knights, I'll show you the way to Northrend. I know, like a shortcut, right?" However, the other Nerubians that were still alive were like, "Anubarak, what are you doing? You traitor king." And so that's why they don't like Anubarak anymore, the poor buddy. So we saw two factions basically of the Nerubians back in Northrend. We saw the ones that were undead and we saw the ones that were alive. And we kind of teamed up with the ones that were alive who just clean their kingdoms. Azul Narup, I think it was called. I can open up the dungeon journal.
Azul Narup.
Those places, we cleaned it out. We killed the Nubarak like 5 times because every single time he was brought back, like he was part of the dungeon and he became back in the tournaments. But that was a kingdom of the Nerubians. Turns out that there's another kingdom of the Nerubians. In this case, the kingdom of Ashkahet, which is underneath Keselgar, which is the 4th leveling zone, so the final leveling zone. And I'm trying to remember what they've announced at BlizzCon and what I can tell. Basically, we're gonna find out what this ancient old empire is all about without a Lich King wiping them out. Like the Nerubians are intelligent, they're powerful. They've compared it at some point with if the Titans hadn't shown up, the Nerubians would have had a powerful empire like the Night Elves had, or like the Trolls had. Like the Nerubians would be a powerhouse together with all the bug races. Nerubians are badasses. It's just that, the Titans showed up, and so they had to go underground. They were like outnumbered. But the Nerubians are no dummies, and they're not weak. And so we see that part of the Nerubians down below are still, are connected to like Xalotov and the Void. But part of them also not so much. And we're going to dive in there and going to be like, ooh, what's going on here? And of course, we are against Xalotov, so you can fill in a little bit of the blanks, but yeah.
So are they kind of like neutral? Like some of them are bad, some of them are helpful?
You've played Legion, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember like the rebellion during Legion?
The rebellion of the Nerubians?
It started with an N, yes. With Sudamar the Nightborn?
I don't remember.
All right, well, it's similar to that situation. So, basically, you have the Nerubians that are allied to Xalotov, and you have the Nerubians that are like, yeah, this is not the way, and we're going to be partying with the ones that's like, this is not the way.
I see. Okay, yeah, I get it now. That's pretty cool, then. So we're going to have Nerubian friends.
Mm-hmm. And maybe allied race, question mark. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know, right? I'm just going to throw my hat in there. I'm going to get all the allied races.
Yeah. Although they are changing many spiders into crabs. So...
Actually, that filter, like for those unaware, they're adding like an arachnophobia filter, so you can turn it on, and every spider becomes a crab. And honestly, there are a couple of bosses that have. There's a couple of spider models that even get me, and I'm not afraid of spiders. However,
Honestly,
turning them into
like
monster crabs does not fix it.
I don't know. I'm gonna turn on the crab filter just because I think it's funny.
It's not funny. There are ginormous lobsters hanging on the ceiling going, "Hello, friend. Hello." And it's like, this is worse. What do you mean?
No, I don't know. I think it's funny. That's great.
Crab people.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to the crab people. So that's it.
I'm hoping, honestly, that they're gonna add filters. You're gonna be like, okay, I want a corgi filter, or I want a cat filter. I just want everything to become, like, I don't know, random as humans. Like, if they have the technology to turn one model into another, surely they can adjust the filter, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have the engineering toy that turns everyone into gnolls.
There you go.
Yeah. So I always have fun because whenever I go back and do Dragon Soul for mount farming. Which I already got the 2 end of the raid. I got the Lifebinder Drake and the Blazing Drake. I just need the RX5, whatever the guy's name, where he's like, I just need his mount. And every time I do it, I turn on the gnoll filter so that Thrall and everybody's just a gnoll talking to each other, and it makes it a lot more fun.
You gotta bring it your own. Yeah, you're lucky though. I need the last one on that one. I need the one from Deathwing. It's like the last one I need for the achievement as well.
Yeah, no, thank God I'm never doing Spine at Deathwing again.
It's not that bad, it just takes forever.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't like the part after it with the airship where you gotta fight everything. I thought that was worse.
Yeah.
I hated the airship. So, anyway, crab people, Nerubians, I mean, outside of that, those are really the main things of the expansion. Are there other like races or like characters? I know what's her name? Illyria Windrunner's like a big character this expansion.
Yes. So we spoke about how like Dragonflight itself is pretty self-contained, but they are bringing in a lot of old lore. Like I was doing a rundown as to the story so far, and I realized like, oh wow, there's a lot of history being into play, because we've had a cutscene in Dalaran where we see Illyria walk up to Khadgar and be given a mission to go find Zolotov and the Dark Heart, like the trinket that Zolotov has. And I realized that there's a lot of history in that cutscene. So Illyria and Khadgar known each other for many, 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 many years. So for the very first time that the orcs came into Azeroth through the Dark Portal, Khadgar at the time was still a apprentice to the Guardian Medivh, and the Guardian Medivh was the one who opened up the Dark Portal. So orcs came in, Stormwind fell, Khadgar and crew sailed over to Lordaeron. That's where he met Illyria all the way back then, and that's also where Turalyon met Illyria, and that's also when eventually like Kurdran and Trollbane, right? Like the whole Alliance of Lordaeron, that very first Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2 storyline. That's being brought back in now. So many years later, like how many years? 20 plus? Is that okay? Cool. So that's like a lot of history right there. But in short, like the important note when it comes to Illyria is that Illyria at some point went through the Dark Portal to stop the original Horde, and then the portal shut down and it wouldn't reopen until the Burning Crusade. And when it did reopen with the Burning Crusade expansion, we went through and we found a Khadgar, we found Dunnav, we found Kurdran, and we found nobody else. But we were missing Turalyon and Illyria. For the longest time, they were teasing what happens to Illyria and Turalyon. Turns out that they were picked up by the Army of the Light and taken away. And they went off into the great dark beyond, into the twisting nether, to fight off against the demons as part of the Army of the Light, against the demons and the evildoers and all the good stuff. However, what they've done is that deep into the twisting nether, time works differently. So what for us seems to be like, I don't know, like 30 years in-game time, for them was like thousands.
Yeah, it's like actual space.
Yeah, exactly. So they've been out there, and you might wonder, well, okay, Illyria is like an elf, they're very long-lived. What about Turalyon? Yeah, he was empowered by the light to just survive, so he's like a super old human. And in their battles, eventually they realize, like, okay, the demons, they don't really die. We just keep killing them, and they keep coming back, you know? They just go back to the Twisted Nether, and they respawn. But Illyria found out that if you kill them with the Void, that they don't come back. And so she asked Lofraxion, which is this light-infused dreadlord that actually hangs out with the paladins in the Paladin Order Hall. She asked Lofraxion, like, what is up with the Void? What's happening here? What can I learn about this? And he's like, oh yeah, I know a guy. He's called the Locust Walker, and he's really good at the Void. So not that I'm telling you to go and find the Locust Walker to learn from him, but you could go find the Locust Walker to learn from him. And so she did. But obviously, considering that Turalyon is like the light and now she is the void, yeah, that clashes with each other. And now their son Arator is probably looking at his parents getting a divorce, but that's neither here nor there. Welcome to Warcraft. We are doing these storylines. But to our Illyria, she did find the Locust Walker, and she did go through training. And if you this is the first time that you hear about this, I would recommend checking out 1,000 Year War on YouTube. It's an audio drama officially done by World of Warcraft. It's phenomenal, and it goes into the storyline. And eventually, like, she somewhat gains mastery over the Whispers. They're constantly attacking her, constantly whispering to her, like, you want to give in to the Void and kill those around you, and you will fail them, and they don't love you, and we are the only path, and you know what the Void does. And then eventually we reconnect with Legion. We actually meet up with the Army of the Light. We had this whole cutscene where we joined Velen on a spaceship, and Illidan smirked at him, and he went whoosh into the Great Dark Beyond, and we ended up on Argus, and then the Army of the Light was actually there, and so was Illyria, and we went through the storyline on Argus. And eventually we come across this Naru, this normally being of the light that had turned to the dark side, that had turned to the Void, and Illyria ate it. Not literally, she like absorbed its power, but I find it's easier to remember if I just say like she ate a Naru.
Yeah.
And now she is like more Void inside of her. Locust Walker was like, wow, that's impressive. You truly are a child that's amazing at the Void. But even so, like, again, the more she goes into the Void, the deeper she steps through it, the more she steps away from her anchor, which is her love for Turalyon and her love for her son Arator. Like, you could go mad by the whispers of the void, but to someone like Illyria, they are the ones that are chaining her down. However, the sad part is, the more that she gives into the power in order to do the right thing, the more she's creating distance between the two of them. And you gotta wonder if someone like Zelatov has got her eyes on Illyria and knows, like, I could pull at your heartstrings, right? I could play with your emotions to turn you to the dark side. What would happen if someone like Turellian, for example, would be taken and tortured and killed off by Zelatov? How would Illyria react to that? And we've seen in the storyline where the Void Elves became an allied race, Illyria actually visited the Sunwell. And we saw that even though she didn't want to, the Void actually called out and tried to turn the Sunwell into like a portal to bring in more Void. And we know that in the next expansion, not the War Within, but the one beyond that, we're gonna go back to Quel'Thalas, which has the Sunwell. What could happen, you know? What could happen there? What if Turellian falls away? What if Illyria gives into the darkness? Could she, like, that was an accident. What would happen if she would willingly go to the Sunwell in order to, you know, there's a whole bunch of scenarios that they could play with, but yeah, in a real short, Illyria, massive, powerful Void Wielder, currently against Zelatov. Time is going to tell where her story is going to go.
Okay, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. And she's Sylvanas' sibling, right?
Yep, sister, older sister. Sylvanas is the middle one, and then they got another one, but nobody. Frisa Windrunner.
No, and she's just she's somewhere.
I have no idea where she is. Like, they just... poor Verisa. She could be really cool. Like, Verisa... Okay, so the Windrunner sisters had this thing where, like, Illyria is with Turellian, Sylvanas with Navanos, and Verisa was with Ronin. And Ronin was this mage that went to Dalaran, like, citizens of Dalaran,
oh, yeah, that
raise
guy.
your eyes to the sky. That one.
Yeah.
And they got twins. They got magical twins. And they just don't get to play a part in the story. And it's like, you could do some cool shit with Verisa. The last thing that she did, I kid you not, once upon a time, they put Garrosh in prison on trial after Pandaria, right? Mm-hmm. And Garrosh has blown up Ronin. So Verisa really wanted him dead, so she worked together with Sylvanas. They poisoned his food. And then she had a change of heart. And you know what she did? She walked up to Anduin, who was like 15 at the time. And she's an elf, right? Like, and she's like, okay, look, I'm going to tell you, right? I'm going to tell you, you make the choice. I poison his food. You get to decide if he gets to live or not. A 15-year-old child is like, what, are you kidding me? Verisa Windrunner, everybody.
So is that the last time we saw her?
Nah, she showed up in the Shadowlands when they judged Sylvanas to play the Shadowlands forever. And she said like goodbye. She had a stay a while and listen with Illyria where they were like, I wonder if Sylvanas ever comes back. I don't know, sister. Maybe one of us will fall to the dark side and maybe the world will go to dark. And then, wouldn't you know it, there's Sylvanas to save the day. But, you know, who knows?
Yeah. I'm sure they'll, I'm sure at some point she'll do something.
The audience forgets, right? Like, time passes. Like, I'm talking about stories from Legion, which to me seem like yesterday. Some people are like, Legion? That's like, what, 5 years ago, 8 years ago? What are you talking about?
I was looking up our lore videos, and I found WoW Legion lore for noobs 7 years ago.
There you go. It's like, yeah, that's a really long time ago.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We're old, Crendor.
What? I did want to ask you about the light-infused Dreadlord, because I heard that, and I was like, how does that happen? Like, how did the Dreadlord become light-infused?
So I would have to look up the original lore. From the top of my head, if I remember right, Lofrexian was once upon a time just a demon that they fought. And he was converted to the light by Zera. And Zera was the big old Naru that told Illidan, like, the light is your destiny. And then Illidan went, my destiny is my own. I think Lofrexian went through a similar thing, and he did not say my destiny was my own. And so he was actually converted from the Fel to the light. However, with the Shadowlands, you can already tell where we're going. With the Shadowlands, we learned that the Dreadlords originate not from the Twisting Nether, but they originate from the Shadowlands, from Side and Nefrius. That is where they come from. And we found a book which describes how the Dreadlords were sent out into each cosmic domain to infiltrate them. So Dreadlords were sent off into the domain of life, and in the domain of the void, and the domain of order, but also in the domain of the light. Could Lofrexian have been the Dreadlord that was sent over into the domain of light to infiltrate them? And could he been is he still a double agent, like pushing Illyria into some kind of warpath, or is he truly converted, or stuff to work with? I honestly don't think they're going to use this because of the reception of the Shadowlands, but it is lore. It is part of the story right now, and the time is going to tell.
All right. Yeah, I was just. It's not something you see every day. Just a Dreadlord paladin, essentially.
No, like if you it was part of the storyline of Legion, and one of the things, this was something actually interesting. I love Legion, but that's also because I'm a content creator, so I had the opportunity to play every single Order Hall campaign and every single artifact. There's a lot of different kind of stories happening in there. Like if you did not play a paladin or a priest, you would not really run into Lothlorien. If you did not play a Retribution Paladin specifically, you would not know that Tyrion did not die on a broken shore when Krokul blasted him with the Fel. Tyrion died like a couple of weeks later. There's little tidbits in the lore in Legion are so scattered because of this class-specific, faction-specific, all these specific things that I'm like, I love the amount of replayability and how much value added to the alts. But at the same time, I can see why you're no longer doing it because, yeah, people just don't know a Lothlorien.
Yeah, not everybody's gonna go through all like 30-something specs to
exactly
find it all. Yeah.
If you do need them, by the way, I got them all up the channel. YouTube.com/Nobbel87, Order Halls, artifacts, it's all there.
That's right. All over on the old Noble YouTube channel. I like your shameless plugs. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I learned from the best.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much all I wanted to get. I think I pretty much have a good understanding now of what's happening in the War Within. I'm definitely more educated than I was an hour ago. I'll tell you that much.
It's a lot happening, and it's also a lot to be revealed. And I find it kind of cool. Like another thing that they're adding for like quality of life is that there's got to be, for those interested, there's a lot of text boxes to read, like, oh, who are you and where did you come from? And there's also a lot of stay a while and listens, so you can actually have like a little dialogue between characters and learn more about their history. For example, Moira, which is the child of Magni. They have a history together, right? Like a long history from Classica back in the day. So you can actually ask her, like, okay, what's happening here? And she'll give you a rundown, not like a Wikipedia rundown like I would, like Moira was part of the Classic quest line and imprisoned in Blackrock Depths. No, she talks to her father like a daughter would talk to her father. She goes like, Dad, our relationship's been busted or whatnot, but you know what? We can still do something about this, and that's kind of I really, really like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably where we're gonna wrap this one up. So
sounds good.
Thank you again for helping me understand lore for nearly a decade. We have our backlog of lore for noob videos as well if you want to go listen to any of those. It's just this, but with older expansions. Who would have guessed?
Like, honestly, it's the least I can do to make up for stealing your Pirate Cove tactic.
Yeah, the Plunder Storm tournament, just unbelievable. All right, well, where can people find you? Even though I think they probably know already, but say it again.
Nobbel87 on YouTube, Instagram, Discord, Twitter, all that good stuff. Or if you're looking for like lore, just type in story of with whatever character or subject you're looking for, and either my video or many of the other lore people out there on the YouTube come up and dive into it. And hopefully the world of Warcraft will open up to you in a whole new way.
Yeah, so go learn some stuff. And if you want spoilers, you do spoiler stuff on your channel too, right? I take it.
Yeah, I mark them. So I've got videos marked like War Within Alpha and also playlist War Within Alpha. Those are full-on spoilers. And if it's just like lore or speculation lore, those are spoiler-free. And I'm always very careful, like thumbnails and titles and whatnot, because I don't want you to open up your YouTube and be like, oh, that's what's going to happen. I hate it myself. And yeah.
Meanwhile, on this channel, we got pointless top 10 worst jobs in World of Warcraft. So really the complete opposite of what you do, but...
So can you spoil me? What is like the top 5 worst job? Because I know there's like poop scoopers. Like what else you got?
Oh, I've already moved on to our next pointless top 10, which is libraries. But I do...
Ooh.
There's actually some
libraries.
Cool
Now you're talking my jam.
Yeah, there's actually some cool library. I like finding the little things. Some people get mad when I do pointless top 10 stuff and don't include their favorite thing. They're like, you didn't put this thing in. It's really cool. And I'm like, I didn't want to do that because I found this random other library that looked cooler. Like some people get mad when I don't take a very heavily lore implicated thing. And I'm just like, I found this library on like a coast in a random area, and I thought it was cool.
So they find that your pointless top 10
Yep.
was it was not accurate enough to their taste.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
Yeah,
cool,
'cause
cool.
the whole point of pointless top 10 is the list is pointless. That's the
No,
main...
no. I want you to hit my favorites, and if you don't, I will leave a comment.
Yeah, which, you know, it helps the algorithm anyway, so leave your comments. It's fantastic.
And it gives you a list of part 2. Surely it does, right?
Oh, yeah, I've done a pointless top 10 things I forgot in other pointless top 10s. And I'm sure I'll do another one of those eventually. One of the worst jobs... oh, yeah, carry on, yes.
You could do like a react video to your pointless top 10s, like a pointless top 10 reactions to my top 10 reactions.
Yeah. Oh, now you're doing it.
Now we're metagaming.
Yeah,
Hey,
now you're
I do
metagaming.
remember like one of them you did was in like there was dotted on a building where if you look up, all of a sudden you see like the bookcases circling around that tower.
Yep.
To this day, still the most mind-blowing revelation I've ever seen. That and the treasure inside of the statue in Strangleform Vale. That's like, what?
Yeah. That's the
There you go.
That's the... I do that every pointless top 10. Go buy that statue with the treasure. And that book, the Dalaran book thing where you look up, that's definitely in the top 10 libraries. 100%.
There you go. There you go.
Also, if you want a worse job, one of the worst jobs is working on the Booty Bay construction project that's been going on for like 14 years and it's still not done. And I was like, dude, every day these goblins get up and go to work and nothing gets done. And I'm like, are they in a Groundhog Day situation where they're like, I guess I just got to keep doing it? Is this like some sort of scheme where they're laundering money or something for Booty Bay? But then I feel like the Booty Bay, like Baron Revel guys or whoever, would be like, yo, I'm not funding this, and then they'd all go home. Like, there's a lot of questions. That's the real lore of the game.
I was about to say, so you've also gone into like the Shimmering Flats, right? Where they used the race in Classic. Like, did they also realize that there was no race, that they were just doing it for a pointless existence, and there's actually just an Overlord god looking at them with a smile on their face? Meanwhile, they're doing something meaningless.
Yeah, but they might enjoy racing. They're having fun.
Enjoy restoration. What do you mean?
I don't know if they're gonna enjoy constructing Booty Bay towers where nothing's getting done. I don't know. Either way.
Let's wrap it up, baby.
Either way, we're done. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Noble. And we'll see you for the next lore for Noob video.
See ya.
See ya.